Hello, this is Amy Dryden with Build It Green. Welcome to the webinar on version 6, GreenPoint Rated. This is the recorded version of the mandatory webinar for all raters to maintain their certification for GreenPoint Rated. Again, this is a mandatory webinar. Raters are required to attend a live or view this recorded webinar. You will receive a quiz at the end of this recording. It is worth 1.5 CEU credits, and this webinar needs to be completed by the end of March 2014. The result is raters cannot submit new data collection forms for version 6.0 until after attending a live webinar or viewing this recorded webinar. Our education team will be tracking webinar attendance and completing outreach to ensure that you participate. For the agenda of what we're going to do, I'm going to take you through some of the GreenPoint rated policy changes, dealing with the version 6 timeline, quality assurance reviews, the updates that resulted in system alignment, our certification levels and certificate redesign, prerequisites for the program, innovations, and the submittal process and documents. We'll take a pause there and then we'll go through the GreenPoint rated measure updates, where we will be specifically focusing on the measures that have changed for version 6.0. So for the timeline for version 6, our new home single-family and multifamily will be available January 1, 2014. It will be required for all projects permitted and submitted after January 1, 2014. Our existing home single-family and multifamily programs are undergoing design review right now. Our goal is to evaluate the current program design and align with the market opportunities that we're seeing. We intend for this version 6 for the existing home suite to come out somewhere in Q1 of 2014. In the interim, please continue to use the current checklist for program submission. I wanted to update you on quality assurance reviews. You probably have received recent communications from our education department regarding the recertification process. We have recently decoupled the quality assurance review from the recertification. We will be revising the quality assurance and quality control process for GreenPoint Rated so we can really increase our mentoring opportunities and streamline it for you. Because our goal is to support you to be better raters out in the field and work most effectively with your clients. As we go through this revision of the QA/QC process, we will be reaching out to you to schedule your reviews. So don't worry, you won't lose certification or anything like that. We will reach out to you to schedule that review. And you can recertify just by meeting your CEU requirements and taking a rater exam or completing a rating within that certification cycle. I also just wanted to point out there, we have reduced the CEU requirements for GreenPoint Rated. It has been decreased from 16 to 8. In this update process, we have created a rater agreement. In the past, you all have signed a rater agreement which indicates that you will abide by the code of conduct. And this has usually been delivered at the time of an examination. We're just refining it. It's going to include all of the content that's held within the code of conduct, but it will be a discrete document. In 2014, it will be integrated into all of our trainings, and we will have folks sign the rater agreement in that process. For all existing raters, which are you all, we will reach out to you in 2014, send you the document, you can review it and sign it and send it back to us. There's nothing kind of extraordinary in there. It's pretty simple, but it's just verifying, abiding by the code of conduct, and it's a pretty straightforward document. So just look for that in 2014. So the system alignment. This is the first time we've actually had all 4 rating systems in place at the same time. Having launched the new home rating system in 2006, our existing home single family in 2008, and existing home multifamily in 2010, this is the first time we are updating all 4 rating systems at the same time. In that process, we've been able to accomplish a number of things. First, we only have 2 manuals now rather than 4. So we have a new home manual and an existing home manual. Each of those includes single family and multifamily. We have revised the manual format slightly as well. We still have 4 checklists. The measure titles and points for all 4 systems are aligned. The measure numbers are aligned within new home and aligned within existing home, but not necessarily across those two. I think this kind of organization will allow you to have less resources to grab, to be able to clearly look at new home as an entirety, whether or not you're navigating single family or multifamily. So hopefully this organizational structure will work for you all. Additionally, in this last revision, we created certification levels, and a lot of that has come from GreenPoint Rated was developed as a point-based system. We start at 50 and you can go up to 350. What we've done in this time is we've actually capped it at 300. The number of measures available, actually you could gain more than that, but some of them are mutually exclusive, so we capped it at 300 as the highest point. And we created certification levels to allow builders to understand where they fall within the program and how they relate to other projects. I think the certification levels will allow people to talk more about their achievements more easily than solely just the points. The points still will be included on this certificate, and you'll be able to see the redesign of that certificate that we've completed for this round. So on our improved certificate design, you can see down here way at the bottom, we have our points, total points for the project, points in each category, etc. You see there the 90, 14, etc. with total points of 175. We have added additional information regarding the savings, the environmental savings and benefits of green building. Because we have the climate calculator, we wanted to bring more attention to it. So in the middle section there, we have numbers of the percentage of water saved per year for that particular home, or energy saved per year for that particular home. And we created these equivalencies just directly adjacent to those numbers in a metric that makes sense to a homeowner or an individual, something that they can understand what 20% savings of water looks like. And then you can see we have the graphs there to indicate how they relate to an average California home, regardless of what year it was built, and what the estimated savings would be based on average California utility costs. This certificate design will only be available for version 6.0 projects. Okay. For version 6, we have some minimum points for new home. You can see for energy, we have 25 points, which is decreased down from 30. Water conservation, indoor air quality, and resource conservation are all at 6. And community is 2 points, where previously we did not have a minimum number of points for new home single family. Additionally, you can see at the bottom where it says any category, 5 additional points. If I add up 25, 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 2, I essentially get 45 points, which leaves me with 5 points to reach the minimum number of 50 for certification. I can garner those 5 points in any category, and that gives us some flexibility. It also mirrors the structure of the existing home program, which people really appreciated that accommodation. As far as prerequisites, you can see here there's a number of prerequisites for version 6. The first line at the top I want to bring your attention to is Cal Green. So for new home, single family, and multifamily, Cal Green residential will be required. For the existing home, multifamily, and single family, Cal Green will be a prerequisite if it applies to that particular scope of work. All raters will be verifying Cal Green, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Our energy performance is still as it has been in the past, that it's 1% better than the current energy code, which is 2013. GreenPoint rated checklist on the blueprints, ASHRAE 62.2. And if we continue on down, we have the appraisal addendum, the second line from the bottom. That is a new requirement for all rating systems. And we'll talk about what that looks like. We still have a minimum number of points in each category, and a minimum of 50 points for our new home, and a minimum of 25 for the existing. So version 6 for CalGreen requirements. CalGreen is a prerequisite. We're awarding 4 points for CalGreen compliance. Now, as a rater, you are verifying CalGreen solely for GreenPoint rated compliance, not for code compliance. We do have a verification manual for CalGreen for GPR to support your efforts, as well as a checklist included in the data collection form where you can look for the particular measure, the verification, and pass or fail it. If a jurisdiction would like you to do CalGreen verification for code, you may use this tool and it may be helpful for that effort, but that will be based on whether or not the jurisdiction would like to identify special inspectors to do CalGreen compliance verification for them. For our version 6 energy performance, we are looking to refine that at the very moment. It will be lower than 15%, and we're looking at a possible range from 5 to 10% better than the 2013 code. Because of the delay in the software, we haven't had the cost analysis that we would like to determine our threshold. We have committed to the 25 required points for energy will be earned or achieved based on meeting the minimum threshold for compliance with GreenPoint rated. So for example, if we started at 5%, that 5% would earn you 25 points. Or if our threshold was 10%, getting 10% better than the 2013 code would earn the project the 25 minimum points for energy. For our innovations, if you've had a chance to look at the PDFs of the checklist on our website, you'll notice they're significantly shorter. We've removed the innovation sections from the checklist, and any measures that are commonly used or have some great benefit, we've moved up into the appropriate section for that measure. So for example, gray water, pre-plumbing for a gray water system or an operational gray water system used to be in the innovation section under plumbing. It is now on the checklist under G, plumbing, and that's where you'll find the gray water. There was also a measure under innovations under plumbing for a composting toilet. This is an example of a measure that's rarely used. And so what we've done is we're putting them into an innovation database. That way, all the measures that are infrequently used that were on the checklist, we put in that database. And then as you all as raters submit innovations, we'll capture them in that database. It will have a table of contents for all approved measures. There will be one PDF file per measure, and it will look just like the manual. So you'll be able to see the intent, the description, the criteria for qualification, and the verification, code issues, as well as additional resources. And you will have access to that, and you can leverage those innovations and pull them into projects as appropriate. So we've updated the submittal process in some of our documents. A lot of this has been focused on, our personal experience in working with you all as raters and looking through the process, as well as hearing comments from you as you work through the documents and utilize the tools to complete a project rating. We're really looking to improve the quality of data and to provide active notifications to the rater, which are currently happening. So you're getting notifications where a project has been, we haven't seen a lot of activity in it in a while, so we're sending out notifications that way just to make sure we're not missing something or something hasn't fallen through the cracks. The billing contact through our online payment system. The billing contact is getting information of an invoice. They're also getting information on a regular basis when an invoice has remained unpaid. The project contact has not recently been getting information from us, and we're revising this process to engage them a little bit more in GreenPoint rated, and I'll talk more about that in one moment. We have, as far as trying to look at improving our data and the quality of our data, have revised the new home single family and multifamily data collection form. We revised the format, so instead of having 3 or 4 verification tabs, we now have one and a column for each of the time periods where you'll be doing the verification, so you can have one place for notes. We also have included some required fields for uploading. So when you're uploading into the tracking system, you have to include the total number of units, you have to include your name as the rater and email, and a couple other minimal fields that really just give us required information. If you don't have them, the tracking system will disallow the upload and it will indicate the missing field, so you can provide that information and then try the upload again. We do have additional required measures for submittal. These are measures where we're looking for more project information or climate calculator information. And the project, you'll still be able to upload the project to the tracking system, but the review staff may reject the submission. They'll inform you of what that specific correction needs to be. We're in the process of creating some great video tutorials of required fields and the new format and submittal process, and very short bites of 3 minutes, something like that, so you can easily access them for guidance. The required documents haven't really changed for the initial to the final. I have highlighted there in red that for the initial we will be looking at a draft appraisal addendum for the project, and at the final we'll be looking at a final appraisal addendum for each home that's undergoing certification. So before I go on, I want to pull up the data collection form so I can show you what we've done to streamline it. We still have our instructions tab, as you can see here, on how to use the data collection form. We have our project information tab, and you'll see all the required fields that are noted here on the right hand side. Okay, so you can see zip code is required, total number of units. We happen to be looking at the single family data collection form. You can see here total number of single family units. And as we scroll down, there are a couple of required fields for the climate calculator. Right. And some additional fields. Let's look at, for example, maybe the rainwater. You see there's nothing that's showing up here as required. If I happen to go to the planning score sheet and I go down here to my rainwater and I say, yes, I'm going to have greater than 2,500 gallons. And I go back to my planning, my project information. Now you can see this showed up here where it says required for measure C8. So that way you as a rater know what specific climate calculator data you need based on the measures that are selected. And you don't have to kind of navigate through a number of data points where they may not be appropriate. So it'll help you focus your time and energy. We still have our address tab here. We also have an extra column where you can put in whether it's ready for certification, so we need to have that done. We have our Title 24 inputs page, just to recognize the code, some of the outputs from the compliance software, and some of the outputs from our GreenPoint rated net zero energy calculator. Our planning score sheet has been redesigned slightly, a little bit of a facelift. You don't have the update forms here. But I do have this where I'm, doing my yes to all my measures. So let's just have me say yes to a couple. And then we'll see what happens. You can see my points show up here and the graph is moving. All that's standard. My blueprint score sheet is pretty standard here. And then I look to the verification results tab. So now I have one tab here versus the 3 before. And I can see I have the possibility for the plan review status where I can write anything in there. It's open. It's something I can use during the project cycle. I have my rough verification status where it's incomplete. I haven't done it yet. It's passed or it's failed, right? My final verification, I haven't completed it yet, but yet I have the documentation. So let's say these 2 pieces pass. And this result still shows incomplete. And I can put my notes here, my responsible party as as appropriate. And as soon as I do this, then it's going to say that measure passes. This allows me to have all my documentation in one tab and see kind of the progression through the project. And if I want to, I can filter by responsible party and provide some information to my client. The final score sheet hasn't changed much, but it will only show the the measures that have passed. It won't show all the measures. And lastly, we created a certificate tab. Here we're looking for you to verify the information that's going to show up on the certificate. We've included that information. It's being drawn from the project application tab, but pulling it out discreetly like this allows for you to easily verify that we've got everything correct for mailing address as well as builder and project name, etc. And I had mentioned as we were doing Cal Green that we put together a checklist for verification of it. So you can see here I have a section number, I have a measure name, I have requirements for that specific measure. Here's my verification method, and then I can do results for verification, and that's that drop down pass, fail, or not applicable. And I can include some verifier notes. So this is a great tool for you to verify Cal Green. This is all the residential mandatory measures here. And we will have the non-res in the multifamily as well. And as typical, we have an update log just as far as reference if we do any updates. So we're really looking forward to rolling out this new data collection form. We think it will be improve our data quality for ourselves and also streamline the process for you all. Okay. Now back to the presentation here. We have looked at trying to improve our engagement with the builder. And so typically at this point, we send a letter at the end when they've completed the project or completed a number of homes and received certification where they get the congratulatory letter, etc. And we're looking to engage them a little bit early on in the process, in particular because we have a lot of marketing material and collateral, and we want to make sure they're aware of it to access this so they can communicate the benefits of their project to prospective home buyers or homeowners. So we will be sending a welcome letter to the project contact once the initial application is completed. The rater will be included on that email. The letter will review the GPR process, include some information about our marketing collateral and the certificate information that will be included on the GreenPoint rated map, and give them some information on access to the tracking system. Once the project, or at least a phase of the project, has completed the certification process, the project contact will get the congratulatory letter. It will include information on the GPR map and the information in the process. It will include marketing collateral. It will also include a congratulatory letter for the homeowner that can accompany the certificate. That letter just gives the homeowner a little bit more context about what GreenPoint rated is so they can understand the context of their certificate. I skipped that last slide. The builder will have access to the tracking system and solely from a report section where they can see a high-level status of their specific projects. Okay, so that completes kind of our policy updates for GreenPoint rated version 6. And now this section of the program is all going to be about the measure updates and the very specific ones. So I'll be taking you through specific measures that we have updated. So first, under verification, one of the things we've done in the manual, and I think this will be very helpful, is we've called out the verification method. So within the manual, under verification, it's going to say plan review, which is really voluntary and something that should be done up front to make sure that the builder is on target to achieve the project. So the plans reflect the GreenPoint rated standard, or the specifications include the appropriate information. Then we will show field verification. We're not indicating rough or final, but we will say field verification and give information about what needs to be verified and documentation. Each of these three align with that verification results tab that you saw in the data collection form, so they match. Okay. So version 6 CalGreen requirements, I had mentioned already that it is a prerequisite that they do earn 4 points. And we have the CalGreen checklist that I showed to you for verification for GreenPoint rated. Again, this is for compliance with GreenPoint rated and not necessarily code compliance. So let's start through the measures. I'm going to start at site and work through each category. If I don't have new measures for that specific category, then I'm not going to be going through it. Okay? So let's start with site. Job construction diversion measure A2. So this has changed from our current version. We don't have a required measure for construction and demolition waste diversion because that 50% required measure is encompassed in the CalGreen mandatory requirements. So our first measure here is looking as a voluntary measure. And it's kind of our second tier under the current rating system where we're looking at 65% C&D waste diversion including alternative daily cover. So there's no change from that. And you look and say, well, the change is looking at alternative daily cover. And we have a definition in the manual of what that is, but it is where a transfer landfill facility will grind up C&D waste that was delivered to that site, and they'll grind it up and they use it for cover on the landfill to keep things from blowing away or rodents from getting in, etc. Measure A2.2 here, you see, is 65% C&D waste excluding ADC. And so what that means is we want to know that the transfer facility is recycling 65% of the C&D waste and not including ADC, alternative daily cover, in that calculation. To verify this, it will require a report from that specific facility so you can see what percentage is being allocated to what use. Another new measure for us is third-party verified recycling rates of mixed-use waste facility. It's quite a mouthful, but what it really means is it won't be really available until towards the end of 2014, but we're looking at pushing the recycling and the waste industry for consistent reporting and verified results. So it's really an educational aspect in the beginning to increase our consistent reporting at the facilities. Once this is in place, there is a third-party recycling nonprofit who will be doing the verification and can confirm that the recycling rates the facility is reporting are accurate. Just a brief update on some modified measures within this A site section. Deconstruction of existing home or building, it is an innovation measure and it will be worth 1 point. For A3 recycled content-based material, we have combined the driveway and roadway into one measure rather than two. Achieving a lot of our aggregate is recycled lately, and so we're streamlining that measure. On to B, foundation. We just have one modified measure here where B1, fly ash and or slag in our concrete. Currently we have 2 thresholds. We're now only having one threshold of 30% for 1 point. Landscaping. We have several modified measures you can see here. Under C5, trees to moderate building temperature. This is our current measure, which is plant shade trees. It does include the east and west, but not the south. So we revised the criteria slightly to actually be an accessible criteria. C7, 1 inch of compost in the top 6 to 12 inches. It's reduced from 2 to 1 inches. C11, the landscape budget, is now 65% and 50% evapotranspiration rate, which is a higher threshold than code. So we don't have this overlap of the code requirement, which is 70. C17, the community garden, we modified the requirements per unit. It was quite a high threshold of square footage per unit, so we have reduced that square footage per unit and also only required it for 25% of the units. So take a look at that. I think it's a good measure for folks. We do have a new measure available for single family and multifamily, C14, large stature trees. And really this is trying to gain some recognition or credit for planting large stature trees in the communal area. This is not on the property itself, because oftentimes the individual lot for a home may not be able to accommodate this, but maybe in the communal area or along some of the streets where they may have some more capacity to do planting of larger trees. Provide a minimum number of large stature trees, and that is defined as a 50-foot height minimum. Represents large stature. And the number of trees required are as follows. If it's less than 15,000 square feet of that, common open space, and one large stature tree. 15,000 to 30, to 30 to 43, 5,060, which is 1 acre, 3. And then greater than 1 acre, we're going to do 1 additional large stature tree for each additional acre. Maintenance contract with certified professional. This is a new measure as well. The intent here is to encourage proper maintenance of a well-designed landscape. So with the program, we're encouraging water efficient and resource efficient landscape at the onset, and we want the benefits of that landscape to continue after construction is completed. So this measure gives you credit for a maintenance contract with a certified professional. Now, currently we've defined it as a Bay-friendly qualified professional or equivalent. I don't know of another certification, so we haven't outlined it, but in the manual we have included the training criteria, so an equivalent training. So if you're talking with a professional who is certified, and you can look at some of the training criteria in the manual and see if it seems relatively equivalent. And then we can talk about it if you have any questions. On to structural frame and building envelope. We have revised our advanced framing measure. We kind of bundled it into a number of options where we said, instead of just doing cripple studs on layout, we're giving you a suite of measures to choose from. We have upped it to 2 points, and the criteria is to at least install 3 of the following. So cripple studs on layout, 2 stud corners, flat channels or ladder blocking, exterior wall dimensions that are modularized in 24 inches, window rough opening layout on the 24-inch module, no headers installed in exterior walls, so you have a load-bearing rim or headers in the attic. There may be other advanced framing measures that you see, so feel free to suggest some other aspects there. We have some modified measures under structural frame and building envelope. We have modified our calculation for FSC evaluation. This modification actually applies to all measures that include a reference to FSC certified products. So we revised it to account for the different mix of FSC and non-FSC. So oftentimes if you're looking at in a lumber yard or a store, you can see mixed resources as you see in the photo on the right. And the one below, it says 100% FSC. So for the 100% FSC, we are using a 1.5 multiplier for the quantity of the material. For the mixed percentage or mixed credit, FSC, there will be no multiplier for the quantity of material. I'll show you what that looks like. The measures that reference FSC throughout the GreenPoint rated program include dimensional lumber, panel products, decking, landscape materials, the interior finishes, so your cabinets, doors, trims, shelving, as well as flooring. So this methodology that I'm going to show you applies across the board to all of those that reference FSC as an environmentally preferable criteria. So here's an example of the approach. If I'm talking about framing dimensional lumber, where I have 50% of my framing lumber is FSC and the remaining 45% is conventional. If I look here, my first line item shows that I have identified that FSC lumber as mixed FSC. The threshold in GreenPoint rated is 40, 65, or 90%. So I calculate my quantity. 0.55, that's my 55%, times 1, because I don't have a multiplier, equals 0.55 or 55%. So I achieved the 40% threshold for 2 points. If I take that same quantity of 55% framing lumber and identify it as 100% FSC, you can look at my math here. 0.55 times 1.5 equals 0.82, or 82%. And therefore, when I look at my threshold quantity, I achieve the 65% threshold and earn 4 points. Insulation. We have a number of new measures in insulation for new home. These particular two measures, F1 and F2, insulation with 30% post-consumer or 60% post-industrial recycled content, actually exist in the existing home rating system currently. Same with F2.1 and 2.2. Insulation meets CDPH standard method, residential for low emissions. That standard is what we commonly have understood in the past as Section 1350. The points for under each of these are broken out for walls and floors as 1 point and ceilings as 1 point. These products that are complying with these particular measures are identified on our green product directory. And they include major brands, so they're quite accessible measures. We have an additional measure, insulation that does not contain fire retardants. There's a couple of levels here. The first one is cavity walls and floors for 1 point, ceilings for 1 point, and interior and exterior for 1 point. The reason why we broke out and added interior and exterior is because if we're looking at the new 2013 Energy Code, the baseline for insulation includes an R4 continuous insulation for the building. And the most common way to achieve that is by a foam product. So, and it is on the exterior of the sheathing, and it's not to say it doesn't have an impact on, indoor air quality, and particularly if it burns, but we have separated it out to look at cavity and then interior and exterior separately. On to plumbing. So hot water distribution. We have this, it's somewhat of a modified measure for us. Hot water distribution. It's somewhat of a modified measure for us in this go around. G1.1 is still our insulated hot water pipes, so that hasn't changed. G1.2, we're looking at giving credit for a water sense volume limit for hot water distribution. This is about 0.6 gallons, or approximately 9 cups in the lines. And as you can see in the title, it aligns with the threshold for water sense home. The next measure there is increased efficiency in hot water distribution. So here we're looking at giving additional credit for 0.25 gallons, or approximately 4 cups in the lines. Water efficient fixtures, G2. So here we're looking at water sense shower heads, faucets, and toilets. And so those of you who are familiar with CalGreen mandatory measures know that CalGreen has identified the kind of baseline thresholds for water efficient fixtures, as far as shower heads being at 2.0, 1.5 for faucets, and 1.28 for toilets. So from our perspective, we thought about how could we go beyond code and have a good measure. So for our shower heads, we're looking at water sense shower heads with matching compensation valve. And I'll talk more about what that means, but it's essentially including water efficiency as well as safety for anti-scalding. For the bathroom faucet, we're just looking at a water sense bathroom faucet and the 1.5. For our toilets, we're looking at a water sense toilet, so that's 1.28, but we're including a MAP threshold of no less than 500. Now the threshold for water sense is 350, and we're looking at a threshold of no less than 500. So we're actually getting at a low flow toilet as well as a high performing toilet, so you can actually realize the water savings there. There are thousands of toilets available in this category, so it's quite an accessible threshold. For the shower heads, as I mentioned, we're addressing water conservation and safety. And it really means because we're making sure the pressure balance systems may not be effective with lower flow rates. So we are specifying a water sense shower head rated at 2.0 at 80 psi as well as 45 psi to match with a compensation valve rated at 2.0, 45 psi. Compensation valves are often rated at 45 psi, and the water sense shower heads are often rated at 80. And so Water Sense has made the recommendation to align that pressure threshold for testing. Both packages of the shower as well as the valve will be marked. So you will see that it will indicate that it has been rated for 2.0 at 45 psi for the shower head, and you can look to the valve. So pretty easy measure to comply with, but it does require making sure the builder is engaged and going to be getting that specification up front for that particular project. Okay, on to HVAC. For our Energy Star bathroom fans, this is a Cal Green measure, right, for Energy Star as well as a humidistat. We haven't included additional sizing, and the sizing requirements are based on the Home Ventilation Institute, and it should be under 50 square feet or 50 to 100 or greater than 100. Those guidelines are outlined in the manual. These guidelines have been included in the new home as well as the existing home manual in the past. Effective range hood design. This was an opportunity where we got to look at something that we see, that's ubiquitous in every home, a range hood. And we have been required to have ducted range hoods in new construction since the 2007 building code. We started looking at as far as effectiveness and how do we identify and ensure that our range hoods are doing the good job of removing moisture and pollutants from the kitchens. So we have come up with two new measures. One is effective range hood ducting and design. This includes requirements for airflow, ducting, and prescriptive option for installation to improve capture efficiency. And what do I mean by that? Well, here are some options. And by capture efficiency is how is that range hood working to actually cover that range and pull the moisture, pull the steam from my boiling pot of water, or the odors from whatever I may be cooking into the range hood and exhausting it from the house or the apartment. So we want it to work well. So we have three options there. The collection hood is at least 1 inch deep, so it's set beyond, kind of set into the capture hood, and it covers at least 50% of the front burner. Another option would be the collection hood doesn't have that 1 inch sump or that 1 inch recess, but the depth at the front end should cover the front burners completely. Or the range hood with a setting that moves 300 CFM at 4 zones or less if the front burners are not at least 50% covered. So there's three options there to give some flexibility, because this will take some thought from the builder as well as the installer and specifications, right, purchasing, to see what product they're going to get and how they're going to install it. We have also come up with a second measure for range hoods, an automatic range hood control. And essentially, that will function once you turn on the range or the oven it's being used for cooking, that range hood will automatically turn on. So it kind of takes away the occupants or the occupant behavior of whether or not they're actually going to activate the stove or not, or the range hood or not. Okay, renewable energy is our next section. So we have revised our near zero and net zero energy measure. We currently have a design near zero energy homes, and it is a little complicated measure to do that calculation. So here we have a measure for near zero energy where we're looking at an 80% offset. And what that really means is we want to make sure we encourage efficiency and a pathway to net zero energy and acknowledge builders as they're making strides towards that. Then we have our net zero energy measure, which is 100% offset. And that actually has to be all electric because you can't offset gas. So if you think about the 80% offset, Really, that may be up to 20% of the fuel used for that home still could be gas in that measure. Here, under the net zero energy measure, it is 100% offset and it's all electric. And really, as we're looking toward reducing our carbon footprint as a state and supporting our 2020 and 2015 goals, it's really focusing on electrification of the grid and clean energy sources. So the criteria for this. The project must meet the energy code without photovoltaics first. That doesn't mean they have to achieve our percent better than the energy code, but they just must comply with the energy code without photovoltaics. Then we have the tool to actually calculate the net zero energy potential of the home. We are in the process of creating a tool that's going to calculate the estimated annual use of a home. It will take the outputs from the code compliance software for heating, cooling, DHW, and envelope loads. We will include plug loads based on a square footage and the number of bedrooms. Plug loads will be differentiated by single family and multifamily. And we will have some additional uses. It will be initially a simple Excel calculator for you to use. The end uses that are included in that calculation include the following: heating, cooling, DHW, lighting, which means interior, exterior, and parking and hallways for multifamily, plug loads, and really that's the assumption for our personal computer and TV or / entertainment center. That's where the bulk of our use is. Appliances, clothes washer, dryer, dishwasher, refrigerator, as well as cooking based on your fuel type, whether it's electric or gas, and laundry. And for laundry, we will be differentiating between in-unit laundry usage and central. So how does this approach relate to other standards? For passive house, there is not an equivalent because the passive house standards is a kBTU per square foot threshold, and it doesn't include the options for PV. It's really a low energy use home. The DOE Builders Challenge, the standard is net zero energy ready, which means that program is focusing very much on making sure the home is energy efficient, durable. So looking at materials, moisture issues, water resistant, tight envelope, and it has the capacity for renewables to be added. The Living Building Challenge does have a certification for net zero, and it is based on utility bills, and so I would see alignment there as far as standards. And the CPUC is also working on their definition and methodology. It's in progress. And as they move along, we will be continuing to have a dialogue with them to see how we can support their definition and methodology and provide an additional pathway to support their net zero energy efforts. Next section is building performance. For mechanical ventilation, we have our HERS testing, which is required for the Energy Code Title 24 Part 6, and we've just added on to that a low leakage of the system. As I mentioned, our required threshold for building performance, our threshold should be set this month. We're anticipating a 5 to 10% threshold, and that minimum threshold will earn the 25 minimum points required for GreenPoint rated. Additionally, Measure J6, Title 24, prepared and signed by Quebec CEA. Many of you may know that Quebec has gone through a process of looking to eliminate the CEA for professionals, for energy analysts, or eliminate the CEPE for energy analysts and solely focus on the CEA. We will reference and allow credit for the CEPE until Quebec no longer acknowledges that certification, and then we will only accept the CEA. So there may be a slight evolution in the beginning. A CEPE will still be viable, but once Quebec no longer recognizes it, we will only accept a CEA. Finishes. For low VOC caulks. So we are looking at a higher threshold than the Cal Green, which refers to the South Coast Air Quality Management District Rule 1168. So we're giving additional credit if all the caulks are less than 3 grams per liter. For formaldehyde finishes, the current threshold is CARB ATCM Phase 2, and that's included in our CalGreen mandatory measures. So what we are giving credit for is to exceed that CARB threshold, and if the products installed meet the no added formaldehyde threshold, NAF, and those products can include doors, cabinets and countertops, interior trim, and shelving. A health product declaration. This is a brand new measure for us, and it definitely reflects where things are going on the material sides of things in green building. So there's a large effort to build a database of the chemicals and the what is actually in our products, so we can start evaluating them. So this doesn't require, this is not a measure that includes a specific threshold. It is actually a measure that includes a practice in terms of documentation. And so products that comply with a health product declaration open standard. So what does that mean? It means we're looking for 10 products used in the project from at least 5 different manufacturers and 5 different product specification sections. Meet one of the following. And that sounds like kind of a mouthful, but we want to make sure that we're not seeing one manufacturer who is providing 10 products for a project, and those products are 3 different types of carpet and 2 different types of linoleum meeting this measure, because we're trying to impact the market a little bit and drive manufacturers to provide information. So if you have 10 products from 5 different manufacturers and 5 different product specifications, meet one of the following: a complete health product declaration that meets the HPD full disclosure. And it's just a form, we have it linked in the manual, and they just complete it out and send it in. Or those products can meet a cradle to cradle version 2 basic level or cradle to cradle version 3 bronze level certification with a hazard optimization report card. So again, this measure is really about gathering data. It's not indicating whether a product is good or bad, but it is about gathering data so we can begin to evaluate ingredients in products. The next measure is finishes and products. So we have a new measure that's comprehensive inclusion of low emitting finishes. And so what this is giving just one additional point to encourage comprehensive approach for low emitting finishes in a home. So it includes zero VOC paints, low VOC caulks and adhesives, and the finishes for interior finish like cabinets, interior trim, shelving, doors, and countertops. On to flooring. So our environmentally preferable flooring, most of the criteria has stayed the same, but we have one additional criterion, which is RPP labeled flooring. So what that means is we have these U.S. renewing forests. They've created a label for it and claim for wood that originates from the U.S. and that they have surplus. This is independently audited to evaluate that there is a surplus and that it is from the U.S. And it's a transitional label, which requires participants to transition from the RPP to FSC certified products over time. And so it's kind of an entry-level pathway. Just as we were evaluating how we calculated FSC for this new version 6, we have included a multiplier for the RPP because it's definitely not equivalent to an FSC certified product, even if it is a mixed credit batch of material. So we're applying a 0.5 multiplier to the quantity of flooring for reduced credit, but credit nonetheless. So what does that look like? It looks like, if we again go back to my example, 55% of the flooring is FSC or RPP, and 45% is non-FSC or RPP. So you can see the difference. The first line there is 100% FSC, And I look at my equation, it's 0.55 times 1.5 equals 82%. So I achieve my 75% threshold for 3 points. The next line is my mixed FSC. And so my equation looks like 0.55 times 1.0 is 55%. I achieve my 50% threshold and earn 2 points. If the flooring is RPP, I see my multiplier is 0.5. So I have 0.55 times 0.55, which equals 28%. I achieve my 25% threshold and earn 1 point. So you can see the points kind of correlate to the environmental benefit of the particular product. For low emitting flooring, it meets the CDPH standard method for residential. So again, this is our section 1350. We have our allocation of 25, 50, and 75% for 1 to 3 points. And we're really looking at Indoor Air Advantage Gold and CRI Green Label Plus. This is a new measure for us, durable flooring. It kind of correlates to our measure of hard surface flooring at the entryway, but it extends to the entire house, where we're looking at 100% of the flooring in the house as hard surface. And this is really building off some of the research we did for our Climate Calculator version 2, which is incorporated into the GreenPoint rated version 6, where hard surface floorings actually reduce the waste generation over time because you're not tearing them out, getting rid of them, and replacing them. In the Climate Calculator, you will notice that we ask for the percentage of flooring that is hardwood flooring because that is where we give Climate Calculator benefit. Other. Okay, for the green addendum. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it is required for the initial and final submittal. It will be completed by the rater. The reason why we're requiring it is to really advance and start pushing market transformation in the real estate sector. By including the appraisal addendum, it will engage the real estate professional in the green building rating system, and so they can start assigning value to it. We are putting this process in place to align with the rater submittal process as well as the appraiser timeline. The appraisal will be distributed to the project contact and the rater digitally. So as I mentioned, it's a required measure. It will be a PDF of the appraisal addendum to be submitted for the initial. The initial submittal will be a draft addendum for the project as a whole. It will be based on the design conditions, and a template will be included on the tracking system. For the final, submitted for each individual home. Each home that is certified at each phase will have their own addendum, and that will be based on verified results. So for the process, for the initial, the rater will manually complete a fillable PDF and have that submitted. In the future, we will look to include IT to support the process. And let me show you what that appraisal addendum looks like. So here you can see it's pretty straightforward. Basic information at the top, and most of the information included on the appraisal addendum itself is information, about 80% of it, 90% of it you'll get off the Title 24 documents. So there's some basic information about the certification they will be looking for. And they have information about the insulation, the type of insulation, the R value, envelope, water efficiency, windows. It should not take you very long to complete this project. And the entire last page of the addendum, show you here, is all about solar. So again, we will have a fillable PDF of this document on the tracking system that we will expect to be submitted for the initial application review. Passive design. This is a new measure for us, and it's definitely something that we'll be working through the process. But as we were identifying net zero energy and encouraging energy efficiency, we also wanted to make sure we brought attention to passive design. So we have a measure here to encourage load reduction strategies for both heating and cooling through passive methods. Most of these can be modeled in the compliance software, but the idea is, again, bundling and doing multiple passive design strategies comprehensively. So the structure of the measure is based on implementing X measures out of Y strategies. So for a heating load, we're looking at least 4 of the following strategies involved or installed. And you can see some of it's doing with windows and high-performing windows, and orientation, having a tighter envelope, or using wall insulation that exceeds the requirements. Additional practices can be proposed for credit, and we don't have them as of yet, but please, if you're working with a project and they have some additional strategies that kind of meet this intent as far as reducing the heating load, they may be viable. This is a very short list of potential strategies. And for the cooling load, a similar structure. You can see at least 4 out of the following strategies installed. Again, dealing with the roof, a double roof, cool roof, radiant barrier, orientation of windows, etc. So that concludes the presentation today on GreenPoint rated version 6. We went through a number of the policy changes in the program, and then we reviewed specific measures that were revised, updated, or new as part of version 6. This presentation solely focused on the new home series, and you should receive a quiz after completing this webinar. So please complete the quiz so you can get credit for attending the webinar and maintain your certification as a rater. Thank you for joining me today. I hope it was educational. Bye-bye.